What's up, Liron here, and today we'll be looking at art by Wendy Artin. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of Painting Masters, and today we'll be looking at artwork by Wendy Artin. Now, I wish I'd have remembered who recommended me to check out her work. It's a friend of hers, so sorry if that's you. Let me know in a comment down below. But I'm so happy that that person introduced me to Wendy's work because it's just amazing. I have no other word to describe it. I immediately could tell the high quality of it, and it's really interesting because I feel like my sense is slowly developing for recognizing truly great skill. Whereas in the past, some paintings would have passed, in my mind, as very skillful, but then you realize there's a bit of a gimmick behind them. Well, her art has no gimmicks at all. She's an American artist living in Rome. What's interesting about her is that she actually admits, I watched a video of hers and read a bit, she actually admits that to this day, she says, I've been painting figures for so many years. She does a lot of figurative work, but up until this day, most of the figures I do, I'm not pleased with, and I throw them out, which is incredible to hear. I disagree with throwing them out, but whatever. Now, what's interesting about her work is she works a lot in monochromatic, sometimes a bit warmer, sometimes a bit cooler, sepia, maybe Payne's gray. I actually saw on her Instagram the exact paints she uses, but I can't remember right now. But in any case, the way she works, she doesn't draw, especially in her figurative works, from what I could realize. She doesn't draw, she just observes the shapes that the light creates and then paints them directly, which is a fascinating way of doing that, and I think it's a very good way. Sometimes I try doing that, but it's just very hard because it forces you to stop focusing on lines or outlines or contours even, and just start focusing on shapes and noticing all of the different abstract shapes, especially in the human figure. There's just so much of that going on. What else? What she does, and another really good tip, I think, is she switches her subject. So she says after a while she gets bored of painting ruins, so she switches to painting the market, and then people, and then the artichokes on the market, and then cars, and it's just a lot of interest. And I do the same thing, and I always recommend if you have no motivation or you're bored, switch up your subjects. That really helps. I try to switch up doing detailed work and less detailed work, doing all sorts of things that help keeping you motivated. One last thing that I will add is one of her works, she talks about how she created it, and she goes back to the same spot at the same time of day in Rome and continues working on location in stages, which is incredible. I don't think I ever came back to the same spot and continued the painting. I always finish them in one session. But it's actually quite smart if you work like her and you work slower and more detailed and just better than me, that you have to maybe revisit the spot. And painters have done this all, like in old times. It was a very common practice. So in any case, I'm rambling. With that being said, let's get started and start looking at some of her art. I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. Okay, so let's get started, and the first painting is this one, and it's beautiful. Now, I want to direct your attention to two main things I noticed personally. First one, there isn't really pencil here, and as I mentioned in the introduction, I don't believe, at least for the figurative work, I know she doesn't use pencil, but she could very well have done this without a pencil as well, which is incredible because it looks so fresh and clean. And I have nothing against pencil lines showing in watercolor work, but this actually inspires me to not use pencil and give it a shot and see how it ends up looking. Now, I want to direct your attention to one more thing. Notice how everything is done in one go. So if you look at this wall, for example, it's a very flat and clean wash. This shadow is very flat and clean, relatively speaking. This one has a bit of a blossom, but the skill in which she created this is so impressive. You can see on the poles there's a gradual change from light to dark, and it's just so good. I love these details here, these details running across them. Now, I do want you to pay close attention to this scene, okay? And notice this structure over here in the middle, and this dome, and especially these two small details, because the next scene is actually the exact same scene but a different time of day, and also the one after it, okay? So I just want to go back over them and show you. So this is the first one. And then if we move on to the next one, check this out. So you see this is the same two details. Now here, on the previous one, the light came from behind us, the painter. So you can see shadows. This shadow, for example, this cast shadow right here, this is probably cast by this shape. All the way up to here. You can see the shadows on the right and left sides of the poles. And you can see the shadows here on the right side of this structure. But here, the shadows are closer to us. The light is behind. These are backlit. Okay, and this is, by the way, from a poster, I think, promoting her exhibition. So, yeah, this is the name of the exhibition. But you can see the light comes from behind, which leads to a much different impression, feeling, you know, and it calls for a different technique as well. You have to merge more of the shadows. You can reduce some of the details here because you don't see them because they're in the shadow. Notice this building here with the dome, much less details when compared to this one where you can see the sharp shadows. Okay, same thing for this one. This is also backlit, but from a bit of a different angle. On the previous one, you saw these, I believe, between the two right poles. And sorry for switching back and forth. I won't do that too much for the rest of the video. But here, these are here. If we would have moved our point of view a little to the right, we'd have seen these two details here rather than here. And here again, the light comes kind of from the right, from behind. So you get a bit more of a more from the right, I would say. So you get the shadow on the left sides of the poles. This rooftop is completely, all the shingles are sunlit with full sun. Everything is merged together as much as possible, and it's just so impressive. Let's see what we have next. Okay, so she is really well known for her figurative work, so I did want to include one or two of, I believe just one actually. So just this one because I didn't find many that were in very high resolution, but this one is just amazing. And again, the technique she uses to do these is she observes the shapes created by the light and shadow, and then she just paints those directly. No pencil, no nothing. She judges the proportions that way, and it's so great. Let me zoom out a bit so you can just better see it for what it is, maybe in a more abstract way. And it's just so impressive. I love this one in particular. Notice this, there's the blades at the back, and this light kind of penetrates from the left and is visible on the left side of the right blade, shoulder blade. The way the shadows follow the shape of her back, it's just so fun to watch. The one wash that wasn't completely merged here is the hair. You can see there's this harsh separation between the hair and the rest of the body, but everything else was really well merged together. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so this time a still life of an apple. I will probably show another still life in just a few moments, but notice that the main thing that impressed me here is the nuance in the light and shadow. Even just on this little branch here, you can see the light area and then the shadows. There's a contrast of soft edges and then the drier brush. The apple itself is so impressive as well. The gradual changes in light and shadow that are so dead on, spot on. It's so accurate, and you can very easily tell what you're looking at. And the very unique approach. So no background, no like nothing else. It's just the branch and the apple in space, you know, somewhere, and it works out so beautifully. And the shape of the leaves. Notice this interesting shape of the leaf that's kind of curved. And then like this, and then you get this jagged edges that were done negatively. She brought essentially the shape of this part of the leaf by adding the shadow. This is what negative painting is all about. Next up, these trees. The reason I included them, and there are going to be a couple of other trees as well, is notice the lifting technique here. She probably put in the wash and then lifted back some of the tree branches, which is a very challenging thing to do in the heat of the moment while painting. You really have to prepare for it. So you can see this ghastly tree, and by doing that, by putting in a few trees that are more like ghost trees, you bring the focus back into the main trees, and this is the main thing. And I started thinking about this more recently, that if you want some parts of the painting to feel important, you have to push back other parts. Something has to have more value something has to have less value, so that, and I mean value in the sense of importance. Something needs to have less importance to bring out the importance of something else, okay? And notice how she hints at the texture of the trees just by putting in these dark spots, and it's beautiful, and nothing repeats itself. The shapes are all random, which is very hard to do because our mind tends to search for patterns in nature as well, and she was able to do that, and it's kind of receding into the distance. The composition and perspective are lovely on this piece. Some more trees. The technique again is very impressive. The negative painting around the tree trunk while doing wet in wet and allowing some trees to blend back is just beautiful. And there is a good article on Seamless Expression, this website that has so many good posts about her as well, kind of an artist spotlight, which I recommend you check out. He talks about the technique and how it reminds him of John Singer Sargent in some ways, because it's very direct. I get that same sense too, but this is a bit different. I actually like her work a little better. This is, I guess, an exercise. This is the aqueduct, I believe you call it, and then all of the trees. Very typical trees, by the way, of Italy and Rome. And the way she kind of merges everything together. So this time you don't get too many details on the tree trunks because you have the more important, I would say, structure, or you know, they may be equally important, but in any case, you don't get as much details on the trees because you don't need them. You need to show the whole thing, and the composition here is beautiful. It's very landscape oriented, but then it breaks off. She breaks it off using some trees, which is really genius. Another one, really one of my favorites here. You know, I love these kinds of landscapes and cityscapes, and with strong, sharp contrasts. And let's zoom out a bit just to focus on some of the larger shapes. And this is beautiful. I believe it's the same spot we've seen earlier, only more to the left. So this is the same structure. This is the same rooftop. This is the same thing that cast a shadow earlier on this one. It's just spectacular. I have no other way of describing it. Everything is fresh, everything looks good, and you can tell the skill level that goes into these paintings. Another really good one. And notice the sense of focus. Also here you can get this sense of this is sharp and the trees in the background are more light and loose. Same thing goes here. This structure, old ruins or statues or sculptures and everything, and all of these poles are sharp, and then they're really nicely contrasted with these trees that are more blended, and it takes a lot of control to get this effect of, again, wet and wet behind a part that you negative paint around. This is a big challenge. I find, at least. And the textures of the trees are perfect. The sepia color works really well for this. Another really, really good one. I want to keep today's episode a little shorter, so I'm just blasting through these. You can pause the video if you want to see more details of any of these. These I really like. The brushes, still life brushes, and the way she conveyed this, the paint on the brush, you know, an overused brush. The way she conveyed it, I'm not sure how she did it. Probably a bit of opaque paint in the process, but she's more of a negative painter, from what I could see at least, and it's just beautiful. And this is one of the main colored works of her that I've seen that has some saturation in it, and I love it. Let's see what else. Some sculptures and statues here. So we have this kind of a plate-ish statue on a wall of horses. You can see here there's a person and two horses. And it's so masterful in the way she approached it. I think this one wasn't with any pencil lines as well, which again is amazing, an amazing feat. So tons of details, and you can almost sense the texture of the statue, which is incredible. What else we have here? This one again, I really love it. The next one is going to be super detailed, but I love how beveled this feels. There's like a strong sense of parts of it pushed into the wall, parts of it protrude. It's just beautiful. Let's zoom out just a bit so you can see it more as a whole holistic thing. And finally, this, I believe, is the last one. Super detailed. I don't know the exact size, but this is just amazing. It's just, I'm speechless. I'm officially speechless. I don't think I've been too speechless in any of these episodes, but today I am. I'm not sure if these are several sheets of paper or if this is actually an effect she created. I think it's several sheets because it would be an incredibly
weird and difficult thing to create. And I think the difference in color just comes from the stitching of the photo together, or the paintings together. But just beautiful. Notice all of these tiny details of highlights and shadows, and highlights and shadows. You know, shadow at the top and highlight at the bottom is a dent. And then shadow in the bottom and highlight at the top is beveled outside. So much skill. And I think this is the last one. I hope you enjoyed seeing her work. This has really, again, changed my view of the watercolor world in general, and makes me want to strive to do things more accurately, more daringly, more freshly, less pencil maybe, work more with the brush, and we'll see where that direction may take me in the future. I want to, I don't know, thank Wendy for creating such an amazing line of artworks that's just so impressive. And with that being said, we can wrap up this video. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Painting Masters. Really one of the most incredible artists I shared here, and all of them are really great in their own way. But as soon as I saw Wendy's work, I knew that it happens to me once in a while. I'll discover a new artist and I'll be like, okay, so my entire watercolor experience can be divided to before I learned about this artist and after I learned about them, which is an incredible thing to say. I had the same thing with Joseph Zbukvic and Alvaro Castanet, and now this, I think I had a very similar thing with Sargent. And now it's just one of those leaps, at least for me, of like what can be done, the different effects that can be achieved, the fine details, and the willingness and acceptance of the journey of mastery, I would say. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to give it a like if you have. This really helps YouTube promote the video, and I'm trying to get to as many people as possible. If you still haven't subscribed, make sure you do. I have tons of other episodes of the Painting Masters series and a bunch of other series and full processes and anything really that you may be interested in when it comes to watercolor, and some drawing as well. I want to thank you so much. I will see you again in another vid and in another episode really soon.